All right, friends and neighbors, welcome back. Welcome back. Hey, there was something that came up as a part of this summer networking build, and I thought I would bring it to your attention because it caught me napping a little bit, and I thought you might have the same issue, especially if you were following along with what I was doing. And it is all about printing. Dope. So, how did I forget about the printers? Well, if you were watching the series, you know that I was pretty jazzed about the site survey and figuring out what all the frequencies were, where my neighbors were, why my network was not getting what I wanted out of it, and then the speed test. So, I was really pushing for channels and performance, but I left out a critical item, and that was the ability to print. Now, I'll tell you about the problem here in a second, but here's how I found out about the printing, because I don't do a tremendous amount of printing myself, but other people do. And so I kept getting asked, why isn't anything coming out of the printer? Now, we had a printer that was, going to sleep and stuff like that, because how often do you print during the summer? So I was, at least in my case, anyway, nobody's in school and like that. So, um, I said, well, let me adjust the power savings and the settings on the printer, and I thought that might do it. But of course, that wasn't really the issue. And then I did a little, wireless scan from the printer itself, and it couldn't find the new network. So I went, oh no, is this not going to be able to find the new networks at all? And then, because it could find other networks. And then I was, sitting mulling this over, and then I got a little packet that came out of one of my machines, and it was the Internet Printing Protocol. And I thought, all right, well, clearly nobody can get to this printer, so let's spend a little bit of time on it. So here's the problem, right? As you know, I moved everything here to 5 gigahertz channels. Outstanding performance, no interference. Let's go get them. Big fat channels, high speed connectivity. Nice. But many printers today, and I do mean many printers, do not support 5 gigahertz. So it is not a standard feature. I was actually a little surprised when I started doing a little research for this particular video. A lot of printers do not support 5 gigahertz. So they say Wi-Fi printing, but what they really mean is 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi. And that means 802.11b, G, and 802.11n in those frequencies. N is also 5 gigahertz, but don't be fooled. If it says BGN, that means 2.4 gigahertz. So that means no 802.11a, no 802.11ac, or anything associated with those higher frequencies. So that's a problem. So I've got this brand new network, and my printer can't connect to it. But no panicking. No panicking. I mean, initially I thought, oh, geez, I got to buy a new printer. But then I went, wait a second. You are a networking kind of guy. Let's see if we can figure this out. So you could buy a new printer. You could do that. And if you're in the market, maybe that's a good solution. But if your old printer is just fine, we have a couple of things we can do. Number one, you could just say, well, does my Ethernet or does my printer have an Ethernet port? In which case you could just plug it right into the network, problem solved. Or you could connect that printer to a machine and then share that printer with everybody else in the house. So you could do that too. So you could make it what we used to call a local printer. So one connected via USB port. We used to do parallel ports and so on. But the problem that I had is that I didn't have a network jack there, and I didn't have a PC close enough to run a USB cable, or at least not one that I wanted to run a USB cable to. And we liked where the printer was, so I didn't really want to move it. So what I decided to do was use one of my old Belkin APs, right? So this is actually a wireless home gateway, but I turned it into an AP. And I decided to just set up a 2.4 gigahertz printer network. Now you might say, well, the whole deal was moving to 5 gigahertz, and that's true. However, this is for the occasional print. It's low capacity. It's not bothering my brand new network. So this ended up being a fairly straightforward solution. Didn't create any problems for me. And these are, relatively low range, so I shouldn't create too many problems for my neighbors either. And the nice thing is that since all of the house computers had the printer already installed, I didn't have to change anything, right? I didn't have to tell them where the new printer was or anything. They just found the new IP address and off we went. So there we go. Problem solved. And I hope these, if you got the similar problem, there's a couple of things you can do. But wait a minute, what was that protocol that I showed you? We wouldn't be keeping true to the heart and soul of this channel if we didn't talk a little bit about packets every now and again. And so that little packet that I showed you earlier is something called the Internet Printing Protocol. And there are a series of RFCs that cover the Internet Printing Protocol. So from RFC 8011, now this is a 2017 RFC. So you can see it's got a high number, 8,000. We're in the 9,000s now. And so it wasn't too long ago. So here we go. In order to achieve its goal of realizing a workable printing protocol for the internet, the IPP is based on a simplified printing model that abstracts many of the components of real-world printing solutions. So the idea is to create a sort of generic printing protocol rather than connect and do a whole bunch of highly specific or proprietary sorts of connections. We might create a standard printing protocol that everybody can use. Now, there is an ancestor set of documents that go along with this. So the RFCs, right in the RFCs, they say that they're heavily based on the ISO documents from earlier. So ISO is the International Standards Organization. And 10175 says the following, right? Specifies a client-server model of printing in accordance with the distributed office applications model, right? So remember that we get the Open Systems Interconnect from the ISO as well. That's the 7-layer model that we sometimes talk about. And the whole point was to allow printing and basic features over a distributed office network environment. So there we go. So this protocol, this standards work is ongoing, and it is part of 2 standards efforts, one from the ISO and one from the Internet Engineering Task Force. So where's my printout? Well, this wasn't a CrowdStrike size problem, but it was an issue, right? We did have to solve the problem of getting to the printer. But we have a series of solutions, and so I hope this helps you out working through any printing issues that you're having. But of course, when you're trying to connect anything to a network, you have to figure out how you're going to do it. And so this, while it was a printing specific problem, this could be applied to any problem that you might have adding a node to your network. And don't forget, we now have the Internet Printing Protocol out there with us. So huzzah for another protocol. Hey, like and subscribe if this video helped you around a printing problem or any other problem that you may have had. And no matter what you're trying to connect to your network, may those packets always reach their destinations.